if you are listening on YouTube, you can probably understand everything a lot better.
Oh wait, where's the link?
Thank you very much to Kevin for fixing the audio. Yes, I will share. So first thing, same as yesterday. Oh, would somebody mind closing the door? First thing, same as yesterday. Yeah, if the aircon's not on, then that would be good to turn on as well. Same as yesterday. Opportunity for anyone who has thoughts about stuff we covered in the first 2 days that have come up to rehash and bring up before we get into the main session. I have one actually about everyone's favourite topic, dispute resolution. I've been thinking about the goal being to build a second layer solution that acts as if it was intended to be a first layer solution. And one of the questions I have is how practical it is from the point of view of charging people for disputes and of building a robust appeals process and all that sort of thing. Do we think it's actually reasonable to charge people for a disputes process that is only a voluntarily opt-in thing, even if most clients choose to opt their users into it by default? And can we really build an organisation that, takes as much due diligence as you would if it was like ICANN in the DNS? Because if you look at the typical sort of volunteer run free disputes thing with something like Mail, then you get Spamhaus, and it's not nearly as effective.
I have a suggestion for how we can not have that problem then,
Yeah.
which is to, if only we had a namespacing solution, but if we namespace the dispute lists or the block lists, then our system just is one namespace of block lists that you can subscribe to. And then, so our volunteer list or whatever.
Are you saying let 1,000 flowers bloom sort of thing?
More like if somebody else wants to create a different one,
Right.
then they can create it under a different namespace.
But this is pretty much saying give up on the idea of trying to build a second layer solution that can eventually be a first layer solution.
No, wait.
No.
I think the whole point of building a second layer solution is, so the interesting thing about building a second layer solution is that you're not actually doing dispute resolution, right? At least you're not trying to figure out who is the owner. Because as the second layer, the only thing you can really do in practice is block some domains from the access.
Yeah, I'm basically copying the ad block model, which is you can subscribe to different ad block lists.
Right, but
what you
the
want to block.
conclusion I thought we came to on Monday was first that a dispute resolution system, Friday, a dispute resolution system that can only block stuff is a valid dispute resolution system.
Yeah.
And also that we were going to try and build it as if it could, with the goal of eventually integrating it if it's successful.
Yes,
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with how things necessarily get into it.
But I think it does, because if you talk, I think most people would be unhappy with a Spamhaus style approach as a first layer solution.
Well, right, but Spamhaus is one group.
Well, no, but I mean,
Adblock has like 100 lists, and so people
Right.
might subscribe to the view list.
But
Right, so
but
I can talk a little bit about how we're doing the list and curating the list if you want.
I'd like to hear it, but just one second.
Sure.
But then choose from any of a dozen lists solution cannot be a first layer solution, because the whole point of the first layer solution is that it is actually removed.
Okay, so
my point is, instead of having the thing that we will find one second layer solution, ideally, I think that we should try many second layer solutions. List should probably have its own blocking list. View should have its own blocking list, and it can have a different.
I'm fine with that, but I thought the conclusion we came to on Friday was that we would use an initially second layer solution as an experiment for building one into the
so maybe this is the let many flowers bloom.
Right, but what I'm saying is you can't let many flowers bloom at the first layer, because you can only have one blacklist at the first layer.
So like maybe you build the ability in how to make the blacklist, and then like they get one, we get one. And then
I'm also not sure that a first layer blacklist solution is exactly right because of the like jurisdictional thing.
Yeah, I agree.
That at a certain level, like IP things happen at first layer, like redistribution of names and stuff like that. But blacklisting is more subjective.
But they do, because like, you know, you can get phishing wallets, phishing sites blacklisted on .com, for instance.
Right, so maybe this experiment
I can
isn't,
see both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my point is that the solutions we seem to be gravitating to for a second layer solution seem inappropriate for a first layer one, and thus aren't going to
I mean,
work.
the many flowers bloom thing is inappropriate.
Okay, but they can
I don't necessarily agree that we can't find a way to pay arbiters.
No, I
I'm
know why.
confused that
but
the dispute resolution started talking about blacklists. How are the two related?
Right.
Based on our conversation on Friday, there can be two outcomes of a dispute. You can delete the domain and block it,
Oh, okay, so
or
that
you can
Feeds
reassign
into
it.
the blacklist.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they can be sort of related, because if it costs something, if it costs you the utility, and let's say you're trying to scam someone, you try to impersonate someone, and you get blacklisted, suddenly your job as impersonator isn't very useful. The best thing you can do is release the name. And anyone that tries to buy that name and is not the legitimate owner will still be on the
Yeah, they get paid, I mean, they'll pay for it afterwards, because basically they'll buy a domain that got blacklisted, and then it will still be blacklisted until somebody takes it off.
Exactly, and then the moment that the rightful owner is able to buy it, they can try to appeal the process and get it removed from the blacklist. So it's a good way to get eventually the owner to get it.
There won't be actually, I don't think, economic incentive for the owner to try and get the phishing domains. Like I know a couple guys on the Apple abuse desk, and they're like, and all they do all day long is chase down the phishing domains, like your problem to the end. And they're like, so when they show up on our system, I'm like, do you want the domains? They're like, Mark, if we took every infringing, like if Apple registered every one of these, like we'd be out of business. You know, it's like that many. So you just, the best place is to leave.
I still don't mind that, because typo domains, like I would take all of those.
Some of the obvious ones, yeah.
like
for
we
sure.
took,
You had to pay for it.
And I think,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'd
so
still
we
pay for it.
took myetherwallet.co, for example, like that's one that I did actually like want, so that I didn't have to worry about it in the future, because it is just so similar. But like, myetherwallet with a C instead of an E, like,
It feels like we're.
the typo ones,
Yeah. There's too many
Useless
typos.
dispute.
yeah.
That's
I don't
right.
like that just.
But I mean, there's too many typos,
right?
but typos are ordered by traffic, right?
Oh, yeah, that's it. Then how do you get traffic on all the numbers and all the typos?
So,
Well,
Blacklist page has
yeah.
that.
You can.
So
yeah, you figure it out.
clarify.
I imagine it's doable, but yeah.
It might be a little tedious.
Well,
Just-
they have like an algorithm, like so basically MyEtherWallet has like three actually separate like things, but one of them is that, we have like maybe, like they're not phishing sites, they're like ad sites, and it's like they just have a whole bunch of typos, maybe 100 of them. Those are all the DNS all ones. And it's like automatic, and it's crazy, and those just get registered.
Also, just to clarify, what I'm saying is that not that Taylor would want to buy every misspelling of my wallet.
Mhm.
Just saying that if
They do, they won't
if-
want that list.
yeah,
It's like a random user buying a new, like a domain that got released by phishing.
yeah, no, I'm fine.
My point is that if she bought, if the owner of myetherwallet.it released it, she was probably the only one who
Sure,
could buy it
but
and
this
remove
is-
it from the blacklist.
I agree, but that's fine. Any system would need a way to take stuff off the blacklist.
But my point is that it's just by blocking it, you're also making the dispute process in a way that at some point the rightful owner eventually owns.
Yes, I mean, I think our conclusion on Friday was that just blocking gets you about 80% of the way to an ideal dispute process. The other 20% would be some way to reassign names in the root, but that we were reasonably happy with the solution that only blocked initially.
Yeah, and I'm interested in seeing how this progresses. Like, I'm very interested in seeing what types of problems we actually encounter in the real world. Like, is it primarily phishing, or is it primarily like, as Ethereum becomes more popular, brands, that were, someone else registered are looking for their names. So that, the value in and doing the second layer solution isn't necessarily that we're gonna take it and put it on the first layer, but I would say the real value is determining what types of problems that, are most common and how hard those problems are to solve. Because if we, anticipate all these hypotheticals that seem impossible or nearly impossible to solve, but the reality is like we have 5 cases of phishing domains where it's like a non-decision, maybe this is just something that we don't have to deal with yet.
So you're saying build the second layer solution not to be structurally identical to a permanent solution, but to be suitable for gathering experience with what sort of disputes are handled and how they're resolved.
Well, and then also inform whether or not it's a reasonable thing. Like we may learn that this isn't a reasonable thing. Like we may learn that maintaining a blacklist and that actually causes more problems due to like back and forth or, the subjectivity of it. We may learn that it's a non-issue. We may learn that, majority of the issues that we spend the most time on are a few cases. There's all these sorts of things that we can use, and when we're talking about a first layer solution, I don't think that like a curated blacklist is going to be a first layer solution. I don't think that's realistic, but maybe the first layer solution is just like some processes that enable like a structure for moving from the second layer blacklist into like the filing process, the dispute process, like that would only be the first layer. And it would be like they work in tandem, and so the first layer would just be enabling the second layer to be more permanent or on the first layer.
So what you're saying is that even though a blacklist isn't a good first layer solution, the process in which we judge a blacklist can be a great learning experience for whatever process we put in the first layer.
Yeah.
Research to
Before
be
you
interaction.
import data on what should
I
actually.
agree.
I don't think a blacklist necessarily is a bad first layer solution. It might not be a complete one, but ultimately delisting phishing domains is just a version of a blacklist.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is like maybe the first layer solution is something more like where you do have the second layer that has these more custom lists, and maybe like we at My Ether Wallet are more like we block first and ask questions later, and maybe Miss takes the approach that you have to prove X, Y, Z, and from those two different experiences, we can then like learn what works and also learn, maybe like I would imagine that the best solution may be that the first layer, if it's a blacklist, like would be something that like the cross section of 2 lists. So like if I have it on my list, MetaMask has it on their list, you have it on your list, like we can be reasonably sure that that's a legitimate thing. Like that's
Hold on, but I mean, wouldn't Mr. or Mu be just arbiters in some kind of dispute process, but then they would have their own empirical data to bring to make those decisions?
Right. Well, so as a so when we're talking about blacklist for ENS, right, we have to like make decisions that are we have to have some process in place. As My Ether Wallet, like we should have some process in place, but also like I can just go ban the world if I wanted to. Like that's, what I mean? Like that's my choice as a company.
Sure.
So I think that what may happen is that everyone, like the level of subjectivity or the level of the approach that individual, clients take or how they implement this blacklist or whatever may inform, the best sort of, it may inform the best process for determining a blacklist on the ENS layer, or it may prove that like, it's more trouble than it's worth. And
I still feel you can import that information through you being a decision maker.
Absolutely, and the thing is, we already have like some process in place for the current phishing site, how we deal with them, and how we give the community information that's there. And like part of that is like we have a lot of the community that is like looking out for these things, and so it's like we have consensus from more than just us right now,
Right.
which is great. And the thing is like I feel like we have an okay system in place, but it's like with the DNS thing, it's like it's a little bit less of a big deal at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good time to experiment with kind of both maybe more aggressive and less aggressive ways of handling these blacklists. And like the thing about releasing domains after like a Fish or whatever releases them is that once they realize that they can release them and then buy them back and fish again, like that's.
I'm saying that there will be dispute resolution for removing it from the blacklist. What I'm saying is that that would only start after, like, you bought the right owner
So
bought
we-
the domain, they could.
So we would need at that point, we need the dispute resolution, like our blacklisting and how we get that, like who we blacklist, to a point where we can actually determine that we're giving the domain to the right, or like the person that owns the domain is the correct owner of that domain.
Yeah, but that's how
Just solve that when you
Yes.
get the first person who comes to you and says, can you please take me off the blacklist?
Yeah.
Like, just wait and see.
It's the same
Yeah.
process, right?
Right, and that's the thing is that in these types of things, we imagine all these edge cases. Oh, what if someone emails you that doesn't actually own the domain? Like, let's talk about for 5 hours a process for making them verify that they own the domain. In reality, nobody's gonna fake owning your domain that they don't. Like, the pictures just don't do that. Well, no, okay, so in general, like, that's not true. But I will say that, like, a picture, in my experience, pictures do not reach out to you and ask you to, like, remove them from the whitelist. Or the blacklist, or whatever. Like, they don't care. Because it's easier.
Communicate at
Yeah,
all
they
with
tend to not-
anybody, like.
They literally, like, it is easier for them
To
to
ban it.
just buy a new domain. Okay, and that's what they do.
to throw some out there.
Yeah.
So the spectrum of opinions I see right now is obviously like multi-layer, second layer solutions. Maybe as an experimental space, maybe merging them. Maybe that's a simple union where everybody who's currently got a blacklist just has full autonomy. I personally think that that's very unlikely to be like a sustainable solution for a first layer thing. Just because if you have a shoot first, ask questions later thing, and
Right.
especially because, like, for example, Mu has more of a warrant system right now, so your blacklist actually means less. When on Metas, once you merge that in there, suddenly we're blocking that page, right? So that page that was maybe not a phishing site, but was more kind of a CD seeming ICO. Now we're like blocking people out of fundraising, like. I would want at least a second signer on something like that.
Well, that's
So,
also why the multiple, like them having one, you guys having one, and us having one, and us like approaching it differently. I think that's the one piece of things that we kind of want to keep a little bit separate, is that like we want Miss to approach it the way that Miss is going to approach it, we want Matt to approach it the way that you guys are going to approach it, and we want to approach it with.
The only problem is that, like, I don't even want to maintain lists, and now I'm maintaining the list.
Yeah, so that's kind of when I think about like these like dispute resolution / oracle systems, what I'm really thinking about is like, hey, let's make a cool mechanism and have like 1,000 or 10,000 nerds show up
Right,
to
so,
play, right?
yeah, so let me
have them
just,
curate the list.
yeah, okay, so let's talk about what we're doing right now, because this is like as of 2 weeks ago, it's kind of crazy. Okay, so we have Ether address lookup, which is a Chrome extension that literally this guy Harry built for me because I wanted to be able to collect from the support emails people that link to their addresses. So I was like, can you make it so that any address anywhere on the internet is clickable? And so we made this extension and it works and it's pretty useful. And like right around the same time as I was launching, we had this phishing problem. And I was like, hey, quick question. Can you implement like a blacklist system so that people stop going to phishing URLs? And like literally that was it. So that extension, Ether address lookup, is now like this anti-phishing extension that has a list. Then MetaMask is using that same list from that repo. And then we have the Levenstein, whatever, distance algorithm, so that we don't actually have to like add every URL. Like you add like a URL, let's say it's like a fake like Oh My Go, right, URL. You would add the real Oh My Go to the whitelist to make sure that that was always whitelisted. You have the fake Oh My Go to the blacklist. Let's say they have ohmys-go.com and ohmys-go.net and ohmys-go.whatever CA. Those would all automatically be blocked from the one.
Great.
Okay, now separately, we have the report feature on the EIL. So the report feature was built by another guy, Louis, who is also the guy that built the cool spam the fishers with fake private keys, which was super cool. Like, I don't know if you guys saw that, but like literally he made like a little thing.
I ran it for a couple hours.
Yeah, exactly. It was super cool. We spammed like 5 million private keys that were just like fake. Like, it was super awesome.
How do they were taking private keys?
So the phishing site's like basically,
Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
I got
so,
it. That's fun.
yeah.
What's best is the best known one for just emailing themselves, one email per submission.
Yeah.
So they were entirely manually processing consulting keys. They just got an inbox full of like emails and private keys with no funds behind them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was
That's
super
so
fun.
cool.
And it was like a really easy little tool. And so then he built this thing that's called Either Scam DB. And so that site is basically just a database of like scams. And like the thing is that we don't just do like My Ether Wallet. We do the fake ICO websites. We'll do the really blatant fake, and this is like something we've been talking about, is how do you handle those like ICOs that are maybe fake and maybe just a scam or maybe just a bad idea? Like, you know, where like I don't really want to be the one that determines like whether or not you should invest in an ICO, but you know, in the case that you have an ICO with a team page that's literally stolen, you know, with mismatched names, where you like have a picture of someone that's like from like iStock photo. Like a random name that doesn't have any history anywhere. Like, you know, what do we do? So that's happening. So that's something that, you know, we're trying to figure out how we handle this. But basically with this thing, you can report, it'll automatically like pull every, I don't know, X amount of hours and see if it's online or offline. And then it hooks into, I don't know if it's automatic yet, but it'll pull like all the WHOIS information for you automatically, and then, and this was I don't know if it automatically does this yet or we're still manually like pushing it, but it'll email like takedown requests and like abuse reports to the information, the WHOIS. So that's super cool. And then every time we get a report, we have a webhook into our Slack. So basically we get like a thing that says like, hey, you just got a report for this website, you know, and then we can add that to the blacklist manually, or we could do another website somewhere or whatever. Oh, and then the other thing that's really cool with the Chrome extension is that we can actually find new phishing sites that are active based on the fact that people are visiting them and getting blocked.
That's cool.
And because of the Levenstein whatever distance, and so then you can plug that back into the reporting one and have them automatically have a takedown file.
That sounds really cool. Yeah.
So that's how we're doing things. And
So about this Levenstein distance, I mean, so that's I mean, I'm assuming it's like number of misspells, like with like shifts and spaces, right?
it's like, do you know how to work?
It's like number of characters different or something.
It's an algorithm that's.
So here's like an idea that I had. Like, it would be cool if you could, for name registry, like pay Norm to have a bigger radius of Levenstein names reserved, right? But the shorter name that you have, the more obviously the more you have to pay, because
it's more
it's going to have a lot of really valuable names in there, right? But with a long name, having you know, a few typos, like maybe it could be a relatively small batch of names in the scheme of things, right? And you like not you're like, you know, you reserve your name and like kind of blacklist like a all.
Actually, I like the idea, Taylor's approach where you whitelist some names and then you can like blacklist everything.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So is that as part of first
list
legislation seems reasonable for long names.
But that can be
For short
secondary.
names.
It will be secondary, you just buy them.
Yeah, but also
I
like
block everything. If I know that a name is legitimate, I block everything that is not, or at least I alert the user asking, are you sure you don't want to go?
Yeah, it's cool as a second layer. I just thought that we could also.
How would you?
Just the top.
This is jumping into some of the stuff I was going to talk about, but that's exactly one of the things that was on the list. So we'll give an example of using an ICO. Okay, so ICOs happen, they're not continual, and they're not necessarily common in a certain distance. So what you can do, and you can take a subdomain, so you know, my ICOs or whatever.eth, and you can register a name on there. Now, regarding the Levenstein distance, what you do is you say, well, there can only be one name that currently resolves within a Levenstein distance. So you can have, I don't know, GNT and DNT tokens or whatever it might be. So you could have GNT.ICO.trusted.eth and DNT.ICO.trusted.eth, but only one of them is actually allowed to resolve at any one time. The idea of that is that normally, as we say, an ICO is a specific period of time.
And we'll have two at the same time.
You can't have two at the same time.
We don't generally.
Right.
If you did.
Well, and of course, that type of thing's always possible, right? I mean, it's not meant to be designed to do that, but the idea that you can do that more specifically in subdomains comes back to some of the stuff I'm talking about. I mean, the general trying to build this generically into something that covers all of ENS is going to be tough. The idea of preserving a block of names over an area is fantastic. Doing it inside ENS is basically impossible already. We know because we've already registered a bunch of names, so anything that useful, you're already going to crash into collisions.
I'm gonna call this to a close because we're running out of time. It sounds like the new consensus is to build a layer 2 solution not as something that can eventually be put into layer 1, but in an attempt to gain experience in what sort of disputes happen and how they should be resolved.
You're not ruling out the idea that we could move it to layer 1 later?
More likely that we would build a new solution in layer 1 using the lessons we learned from the layer 2 solutions.
What would be like the actionable items for this layer 2 thing? Like, what would be the next steps?
I think it would be good to pave a way for a layer 1 solution. Like, even if we're saying, look, you want full autonomy, like if we said, like, look, here's an architecture where you can do it maybe on chain or maybe in like some, I don't know, like we can talk about what that means, but with some path towards that, you know.
So
Yeah.
I think that hammering out an EIP with what the format of this data looks like
Well, I think
is step 1, and
Well, but it's also healthy that that clients try different approaches.
no, I'm just
I'm
saying
not
that
sure
all
what
of
it
the
is,
different
but-
approaches result in the same data format.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That anybody,
That's not a good idea.
anybody can populate their list however you want. Let's have a JSON schema for what the list looks like.
Yes, I know.
Well,
And
and,
let's talk about it and make sure it's a good one, because I have one that we're using and like,
and you are.
and like, I
would
feel
love to
like
just
maybe someone else should like give their input, because I just typed it up one day.
Yeah, so, and then yes, whatever the way that we feed these into like if we feed them into an on-chain registry, is it too much data? We just feed in IPFS URIs, whatever.
Okay, so next up is Piper's talk on package management.
All right, I'm gonna apologize if this goes weird because I didn't prepare a lot, but
Are you gonna be drawing on the board?
I'm gonna draw a couple of things on the board, but not a lot.
Ask your one viewer if they want to see the board.
No, it doesn't really. Well,
Sorry, one viewer. Tyler doesn't care about you.
literally one.
Yeah.
It's probably sorry.
I can see it. They just-
Okay.
It's on mine. I just-
So, all right. From just for a little bit of history, from like November last year through January or February, myself, Tim Coulter, and I'm going to stop listing names because I'm going to miss people, but like 4 other people who are Yuri, who's part of the Embark framework, some of the Nexus guys who did the AppSys, basically all of the people who have development frameworks for the most part, came together and hammered out ERC 190. So ERC 190, for those that don't know, is a spec for packaging smart contracts. It's really good, actually. Now, I'm not an objective measurer of this, but what I will say is that we were very thorough. We hit all of the use cases that are even remotely reasonable that we could come up with, which includes like private chain deployments, cross-chain deployments, packages that have deployments for many different chains, packages that have no deployments, and completely deterministic like dependencies, the whole thing. So we were pretty thorough when we made it. So ERC 190 is this way you can package up a contract and ship it around, which is pretty cool. There's a fledgling support and a couple of pieces of software for it. And then we made this thing called ETHPM, which is a very dusty, hasn't been taken care of very well since we made it, index of these packages. And ENS provides us with a pretty nice way to do namespacing and things like that. ENS was like not even alive at the point where we were making this, so there's no ENS integration right now, but we're we're going to get around to kind of revamping this thing. ENS integration is one of the things. Which is where some of this takes an interesting turn, because I just did a lot of planning for where my development framework is going and how we're dealing with a problem that's somewhat interesting in development frameworks. So in like traditional software, you develop locally and there's no state in your package. Packages don't have state in normal software land, right? Like you pull the code and the code is the thing. But that doesn't carry for smart contract packages. Smart contract packages are stateful. They can have references to different chains and things like that, and live deployments on different chains. So there's this interesting state problem that shows up. And the simple version of this is that if you're a company who's got a token, then you have a code base, right? And you've got your like token contract, okay? And you deploy it, which we'll just call that deployment V1 anecdotally. Later, you realize there's a bug in it, okay? So you make some code changes and you deploy it again. The thing is that your code may need references back to the initial deployment. So that means that as the development framework, you have to keep not just the address around, because that's not really enough. Because if you really want to be safe, before you let them interact with that address, when they're talking about, I want to talk to my original token, you want to actually maybe recompile the original thing and verify that the bytecode at the address is the actual token contract that they're interacting with. Now, this isn't a giant security concern for local things, but now let's pretend that this is like a third-party package or something like that, and now we actually really do want to verify. So we get this problem where we have to keep around old deployment assets from previous deployments for contracts where the source code may no longer exist in the repository. So that's where ERC 190 comes in. Every time you make a deployment, we can generate a package for you, and now you have a completely packaged up little bundle of your original deployment, all the original code that went into it, how it was compiled. Now you can move on to new compiler versions, but still have all the information to verify the original one. All right, so we're going to segue back over to package indexes here for a second. So right now, ETHPM, I don't know, I've got a couple domain names registered, but we're just going to call it ETHPM.eth. I'm going to draw a little scribble in here to represent some level of artificial namespacing that we put in between. Maybe this is like free for all, because I kind of don't want to give people top level namespaces for packages yet. But you know, we can imagine somebody registering an owned package, right, and you know, a bunch of other named packages. So when you want to install a package with your favorite framework, you'll do something like truffle install owned.ffa.ethpm.eth. It'll dig in, look up what the latest version is, and install it. That's all nice and well, and now we have a system for installing packages. But what I've realized, and what my plans are that ethpm.eth is not going to be special. What we're going to deploy, hopefully, this is all theoretical plans, is essentially a package index factory that anybody who's got an ENS name can very trivially deploy their own package index and set it up under their ENS name wherever they want, at which point it's really easy for each development team to host their own index of all of their own packages under their ENS name. And that means that when you're doing an ICO launch and somebody wants to interact with your ICO, rather than just giving them your address, you say, cool, our ICO is at v1.ico.mysupertoken.eth. And you know, maybe we need to put like packages in here because that's where they put it or whatever. But the idea is that we can now use ENS as the way that
companies can communicate to people. I mean, we're already kind of doing this, but people currently are setting this like as a resolver to an address. And sure, that's great. You can just point them at an address. But if this is a package, if you're actually pointing them at a package in your own local index, then now when you load this into Mu, into their smart contract interface to interact with the ICO, Mu can actually pull the source code for the contracts that you, like, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to manually go verify your contract on Etherscan and go manually verify it on these other places. All you do is point people at your package. And each of the sites like Etherscan and Mu and things like that now have all the information that they need to do the independent verification themselves. And the client can do it on the client side as well. So you don't even have to trust a third-party service to verify things for you. You can verify it yourself. It's a powerful abstraction because one, in like normal software, in like every company I've worked at prior to all this crypto stuff, we were hosting our own PyPy index because we didn't want to trust PyPy, right? And like we're hosting our own all of these things, and it was a giant pain in the ass to do these things because it's not trivial to, I don't know, it's not a straightforward thing to host your own package index. But in this world, it gets really easy for every single company to host their own package index, to have their own namespace using ENS, and to have really safe and verifiable ways to signal to people, this is where you get at our contracts. This is how you get at our stuff. And you, as the company who owns the ENS name, you don't have to trust our package index to host your information. You can use your own that you have full control over. It's your smart contract that you own. And rather than just pointing stuff at names, you're pointing them at these like rich assets that have a lot of power baked into them. So that's what we're looking at doing.
Have you thought about, I'm not sure if this is implicit in what you're saying, like smart contract systems and upgrading without having to change pointers for calls by basically like saying like, hey, look, I'm going to call, the smart contract at this address, and then they can update to a new version of the smart contract. And you like find a new address.
So the idea is, okay, so this is how you would get at like a specific version, and I'm using V1. This is like a really bad version identifier, but.
So what if you want, can you get the latest version? And is this something that's like somehow you can get it with a call?
Well, that's probably what the resolver here needs to do.
So I was gonna ask.
Is that the resolver here is probably the shortcut to whatever the latest version is, because you really don't want that to automatically update.
I'm concerned about automatically updating.
No.
Especially basically if like the interface becomes a subset of the old interface, then, or like, somehow
so
the old interface.
So that's a solution that we're not going to solve. That's a solution that you probably solve at a slightly higher level where you get to determine what the authoritative name is for getting at your contracts. But if people want to get at a specific, if they want to lock their version in, that's how they would do it.
So this is, how do I even phrase the question? I don't know what a package index is. Okay, so that's not really the problem. If I'm stuck in old-fashioned thinking, is something, like I imagine getting a package index back is different from getting Ethereum address back.
It is.
Okay, so is there some mechanism that will be signaled to the resolver that says, like the equivalent of a DNS RR type?
So there's the adder resource.
Yeah.
We're going to make an EIP.
So it's a different type of resource.
For a different type of resource.
Okay, so
yes. So it'll probably be the ERC 190 resource, just to be really, because this is not something that's supposed to be user friendly, it's machine readable.
So it's like, the analogy then is that resources are like the RR types of ENS in a sense.
I'm not familiar with what RR types are.
So
like IEC9.
Okay, yes,
So-
yes.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, we're planning on, or I'm whatever, there's a plan, there's a plan to spit out a new resource type, which is package.
This is the kind of stuff like getting into like where I say DNS can go once you're out here like on the blockchain.
Super powerful to
Yeah.
have this generic namespacing solution that we can go to.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
And also, just as a side note, this is where the standard library comes in too. So the goal is that by blocking out some top level namespaces, that once we actually have a rich package ecosystem, we'll not open up standard library as a namespace, but create it and start curating things into it. And then if somebody is inclined to, you can just start importing things straight from there, because it's trivial for it to understand how to reach into those things.
This with that global JSON was supposed to specify things like the binary API.
It's JSON, yeah.
Sorry, however, just to be clear, like if I install V1, ICO, whatever, and I say lock it at that version, it's gonna resolve first and then lock, or is it gonna just save that name? Because the names still feel mutable.
So there's two sort of ways that dependencies are specified, at least in the way that Populous handles packages. There's something akin to like your package JSON file, and it uses name. It looks a lot like a package JSON dependencies,
Right.
which is essentially name things pinned to versions or version ranges.
Okay,
And that one is where you could specify it in a way that let you.
right, you could use Semper in the name.
Yeah, we're pretty strict on Semper right now, but you could get into a specific version or a range to let new people who pull your package down and say install from source, then maybe you get the latest version.
Right.
But anytime you create a package, packages are always pinned to an exact setting.
Here's an idea, have a version number convention where the first version changes only when the interface changes.
Yeah.
It's
like Semper. You just use
It
Semper.
Sorry, and you're doing that with, are you doing that with like this?
It's like
this?
it's interface breaks,
Great,
API additions, and then bug fixes.
that's awesome, yeah, and these are like, another dot and then
It's up to,
Great.
we just decided not to make a new version spec and to use
That's good, that's
Semper.
super smart.
It's
Yeah.
super, very widely used.
Yeah.
It's great.
I didn't know that's what we're talking about. Just in the context that
Yeah.
somehow.
That is a JSON schema. That's a JSON schema for what a walk file looks like. You go back. Anyways, the ETH there's an ETH organization and the ETH spec. If you go to ERC 190, I don't know if clever is the right word, but the spec is not actually in ERC 190. ERC 190 just points to the actual spec instead of this as the authority on where it is, so it looks different.
Great, this is where something something.
And my hope is that, and it's not trivial to integrate with it, is that Etherscan and my Ether wallet and other places who present contract interfaces, rather that we can switch from, here, please provide me your source code and tell me what version you compiled with, and that sort of thing, to this is how you verify stuff, is you just need a package for it. I think it'll take a lot of headache off of those verification services as well.
So my question would be, as it relates to like the ENS roadmap, is if this is a new resource type we support, does it make sense to have a generalized resource type, specific resource type, and what other use cases do we have besides SPM where we might want to consider other resource types for the process for additions of resource types?
I mean, I think EIPs are kind of our established process for generic ecosystem-wide specs. And while if somebody comes along and wants to create the phone number resource type, we should probably have a pretty rigorous process for making sure that we get that right the first time. But we're probably going to namespace ours under something so that it's not even just ERC90 resource, because it doesn't need to be friendly. And And we're probably gonna namespace it with a V1 also, because we're going to iterate on it. So I think there's sort of just a judgment as the IDs come in for new resource types. It's like, are we likely to collide? No? Okay, then sure.
And the way the EAPS process works is like, it kind of depends how much support you get from other people thinking it's a good idea, or whether it's enough to get the peer review to bring you to a certain level of quality before.
Any other questions for Piper?
Does this work for non-solidity too? Like, could I
Yeah,
install?
it's generic. There's not a, it's not solidity.
It's just arbitrary files,
This
basically.
spec is not solidity.
Right. It just has good features for linking together other or blockchain-based resources. Right. Cool. That's good.
Do you have a plan to provide this as like a utility, like to anyone?
What do you mean?
Publicly. You mentioned that you want people to do it themselves, but also that you're gonna have a standard library thing.
So standard library is like EVM standard library. Utility piece, Tim and I have struggled with Tim Coulter, Truffle author. We've talked a lot about why we are pretty sure that we're still a long ways from having a generic EVM install command, because both of us have to write our own EPM integration into our frameworks. So for right now, it's looking a lot like development frameworks have to also be your package management solution, because they're so integrated with stateful, locally deployed assets and things like that. There's like a really, we just don't know where to draw the line yet. And wherever we do draw the line, we have to have agreed very clearly at everything below the line what the.
Can't the line use just some command line arguments?
No, because it's incredibly, it's a complex problem.
Okay.
It really is a.
So a simple line where you say dash dash like Ethereum, and then it knows to put it on mainnet, and then like totally look at mainnet.
Yeah, it's not a.
We've been looking for what to name the flag.
Nick, what's the next one?
Yep. So next up is Jim McDonald and securing ENS deeds.
I've already got.
Do you have any slides? Okay.
I can wave my hands a lot. There you go. Really quickly.
Do you want to stand or sit?
I might end up drawing all my handwriting. Perfect.
Address.
ENS.
Hang on.
ENS. So it's the server.
Say a couple of things.
Okay.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
You guys have to 7 viewers.
I don't think I got a set. I think it being a little bit later in the morning.
And tweets from like 3
Yeah,
people in the room with
I
70% following.
People waking up.
I mean, 40,000 or so followers, they gotta get this money.
7 viewers, not really.
Yeah.
Because I retweeted this one.
We're down to 6.
Oh, yeah.
Recording them.
Go, go, go.
Tim, is that
We're back. Netflix. Right. Okay. So a lot of what I want to talk about fits in very much with some of the stuff that's been covered already this morning. I think fundamentally what we're looking at with ENS and what we heard very much from Piper is this idea of starting to get some more useful metadata into ENS. Use it not just as a resolution system, but as a discovery tool, and bringing more useful stuff available without having to worry about having locally coded information. I looked at the new GitHub yesterday, and a lot of the pull requests are, please add this token, please add this site, and all of that type of thing is great, but once it's done there, then of course we can't share it easily. So it's really looking at how we can do more of that. So specifically around looking at securing names and deeds as a result of that, there are 2 ways we can go. We can be functional and we can be advisory. So if we're functional, then we will block stuff that we don't like. And if we're advisory, then we can put up flags. So an example of the functional one is one that we covered earlier, just talking about this idea of saying, well, look, there's a limited number of ICOs at any one time. We can create a subdomain, and we will only allow one name within a certain Levenshtein distance to be available or resolvable at any one time. So that's the type of thing where it's focused, it's specialized, it's not going to sit in the root, of course, because that would be very, very complex to do and realistically impossible at this stage. But it gives us the additional ability to say we can have a subdomain of the world where we have different rules, and those rules imply certain levels of trust or certain levels of capability. When we're looking at a more generic, how do we sort of secure names, the obvious things we're worrying about, again, we're looking at phishing attacks and we're looking at homograph attacks and all that fun stuff. We're not going to manage functional blocking realistically, as we said. We have nothing in ENS that can stop someone from registering a homograph of an existing name. We work on name hashes. There are good reasons for that. I don't expect there's any suggestion to change that.
I'm aware of.
No. So it's a situation that means that in terms of there, we'll never know about it until we find it. So the question is, can we do something on the advisory side at least that makes that a little bit better? So what we can do is we can have what basically comes down to a whitelist. So again, not for everything and not for all use cases, but for some certain use cases, we can start to look at whitelisting information. So we can have a system where, if we want to go away from a blockchain for a moment, where a company says, okay, I am Fred.eth, and I really want everyone to know that I'm Fred.eth. So I can go to a separate registrar and register using the name, not using the name hash, but using the name, which then allows, through oracles or through identity systems that already exist out there, we've got Status, we've got Aragon, so there's a bunch of ones that are out there that are potential. We can put some level of trusted verification that name maps to an external real world entity that we care about. The other problem that we've got is the user side problem. So Jared, we've been bouncing this around, and again, it's come up a lot, things like homograph attacks. What if someone cuts and pastes the wrong name into mu? How do they know the fact that you've got like a weird S character in there that's actually the Cyrillic S rather than the Latin one? All of that type of thing. So what you've got again is an offline system. It's going to have to be off the blockchain just because of speed of responsiveness and complexity, where you can carry out a bunch of reductions. So you can look for homograph attacks, and you can go, look, this is a dodgy S character, we don't want it. We can look for, as we said, Levenshtein distance for relatively larger strings. Obviously, small strings, it doesn't work so well. You can't do it very well for 5, 6 characters or less, because unfortunately, there are too many collisions to make it easily worthwhile. But if you get to larger names, or again, a restricted subdomain where you have that control to begin with, you've got more chance of mapping that too. There was one other thing that came up, which was an example of a name, which is all in a single character set. So the example I picked was space. You can create the word space in Latin, you can create the word space in Cyrillic. They look exactly the same, they're both single script, but there's no way of being able to tell one from the other. So what you can do is you can also have reductions from non-Latin scripts back into Latin, where appropriate. You're not going to get Chinese to reduce to Latin. It doesn't happen, but that's okay. But you can do that for the obvious attacks, and again, then take your Latinized version and say, can we see if that exists inside the ENS space? And if it does, then we've got another situation where we've got an attack vector that we expect is going on. So the idea is to start to build up these layers. Once we've got the layers, and as we said, unfortunately for that side, it's advisory, we could turn it into a functional system. So say I want to register space.eth, forget the 7-character limitation. I can register space.eth, but then I can also send it to a trust system. That trust system can then look at it, carry out all of the checks that we need to carry out. Yes, you're all Latin characters. Yes, we're happy with it. If you want to do advanced stuff, like we said, if it's a corporate entity, we can check against registers and be that oracles or whatever it might be to do that. If it's an individual, we can check against U-board or Status or whatever we've got out there that we can use to confirm this stuff. Once we've done that, we can build a secondary resolver. The idea of a secondary resolver is if I want to resolve space.eth. At the moment, as we said, there's not a lot we can do if someone puts a red character or anything like that in, on an individual basis. But what we can do is we can have a pre-erasure space.trusteddomains.eth or whatever we want to call it, where all of that work has been done already in the background. So when someone says, I'm going to go to space.eth, we can also look at the namespace of space.mytrusteddomain.eth and get additional information out of it. This is where we get to the whitelisting side of things. And that allows us to have a higher level of trust that that name is valid, has been verified, is not the result of a spoof or similar. And if it's not in there, that gives us our positive, where we can turn around and go, well, actually, you're not there. So if it's space with Cyrillics, or if it's space that's all single script but maps back to a used Latin name, we can get the trust out of that side as well. Obviously, it has all the downsides of being a whitelist. If people aren't in it, they're automatically untrusted. There's a problem there, and there's not a simple way around that, because ENS is a system where you sign in, not everyone has an ENS domain to begin with, and we're going to have to realize that that's something we can do. But for the vast majority of entities that receive lots of ETH, lots of transactions, so pretty much any corporation running on there, active individuals running on there, it should be a relatively small setup process to get yourself on the whitelist. And at that stage, you can turn around and go, yeah, we've got something up and running that we can use as moving from an advisory to a functional system, where, like we said, if you're not on the list, people can even say, well, I'm refusing to send money to this address because it's not recognized as a trusted address. So that's the basic idea. I didn't need a pen after all. Obviously, there's a lot of complexities and stuff in there. This is something that I've played around with for no more than a couple of weeks. But it's starting to take form as something that can be useful. We have a whitelisting system that can already pick up, like we said, if you put space.eth in, it will flag it if it's an all Cyrillic name as actually being mapped to an all Latin name that exists in the trusted domain, which is just a test thing at the moment.
Why does it matter that domains start as untrusted in these whitelists? Like, why is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing unless it becomes more of a norm that they should be trusted. At the moment, we're like, if we say untrusted is neutral and definitely bad is bad and definitely good is good, that's fine.
Yeah.
And if we reset the norm so that untrusted is actually, we don't like it, it might be harder to become a system where we force everyone to use it. Now, it's got pros and cons to do that, obviously.
So maybe instead of speaking of blacklists and whitelists, we should be thinking about categorization of things, right? Because the process of whitelisting a name is very similar to the process of blacklisting a name, the process of removing something from the necklace. So I think that the ideal format we should have on the list would be not only a list of things, but a list and then a category saying, this is a verified domain.
Verified.
Yes, and things, and even things like the reason on why, if it's a blacklist, if it's a bad thing, say why. Like this is probably he's a scam artist, or he's trying to be identified as someone else, because that also helps you if someone wants to remove from being a domain, a name. When you try to identify as someone else, what's the word for it?
Destination.
Yes, it moves from in order for you to move from impersonator into a verified thing, you need to prove that the domain has changed length. And I would even say that maybe you should add some categories there that can be personal choices of the users, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe one user wants to use the new decentralized web, but he doesn't want to find like black market sites, or he doesn't want to find some sort of porn site. And then you can have that category that just states, look, this is this type of site. It doesn't say that you should block it or you should allow it. It's just something that the user can choose.
Yeah. And again, categorization. The other part of that is reputation systems, right? So we can allow other people to say if they believe the site is good or bad.
And this is also a way to reset that, like the untrusted thing initially. It's not like if there's no reason for them to be untrusted, it's literally like, it just looks like, I mean, the only reason they're labeled as that is because of the fact that they don't have anything that's verified. There's no, like, there's nothing bad about them, but like anyone that you would look up that did have this reason that there's a problem or issue with that that's a little bit fishy, like you would know that and why. So you would just kind of expect that when you see a contract that's like, has nothing, like no ad like thing telling you that this is a wrong address, you're like, okay, maybe this is a new address, like maybe, so it's kind of like leaves you with an open address.
So, sort of, because not verifying can also mean that if you're not verified, you're okay, but if you're not verified and you're very closely similar to a verified name, then the client itself already like blocks it, right?
Yeah.
So the parallel here seems to be with Twitter's verified user type stuff.
Exactly.
Wait,
In the, like, if you go to real Donald Trump and you see the green tick next to it, then you know it's probably the real Donald Trump.
Don't give us yet.
No.
For my
well,
they don't-
this is even I'd also like to,
We applied by basically saying, about people are
We
interested
applied.
in us.
No, it's,
Yeah.
they just.
Yeah, we applied and then they literally just sent us their standard email that says, not even like we denied you, just like you're not eligible in the first place.
You're not over enough.
Right.
And then and then I was like, we have fishers after us, and they were like, silence.
We threatened by just putting down the dollar amounts and saying, okay, you'll be responsible for this
Oh,
$1 million.
we're doing that right now.
Like, you
Oh
gotta
my
use
God.
the person that you're emailing.
No, we're
Yeah.
like literally right now, oh my God, like 4 fake Twitter accounts.
So-
Like that. So that's what we're trying to get to right now. Like Twitter doesn't give a crap.
Really
The
don't.
categorization.
I also have problems with that whole verified badge thing. Like,
Yeah, I
So
think
I'd like
the thing
to-
that I learned is that like if you have a verified thing, your comments more, your replies are more likely to end up at the top than your first. And that is like, that gives you more problems than just verification. General verification, it does prevent impersonation.
But then it's about why you
That's
do
why I
it,
kind of not
right?
so against it, right? Because impersonation is for real.
So I'd like to point out that historically, voluntary categorization systems like Mark Your Site as Adult have been quite unsuccessful. Even though adult sites nominally have an incentive to do this because they have no interest in attracting underage users, they don't have credit cards and can't pay for porn.
They don't make their money
They-
by repelling kids.
Yeah, exactly. So, but they although they nominally have some incentive to do this, in practice, the diversity of systems for this and the low incentive for them to put the effort in has resulted in very low participation. I think Twitter is different, for instance, because there is an immediate and visible result to the user for verifying themselves, although obviously the system is somewhat broken.
And that's one of the things that we're going to have to do if we want a system like this to work, whatever it may be. We're going to need buy-in from the major wallet providers and everyone else so we can actually have something we do. So yes, that means it's going to be another EIP and we'll write it all up and see if we get a standard and move it along.
You have to mitigate against like reputational attacks through categorization and stuff like that, because it gets
So-
abused all the time.
We've been talking about this internally a lot in terms of how can we enable the user to, when they type in an address or an ENS name or anything on the site, to quickly verify that this is like the right address or like the address that they're looking for, to be objective about it. And we've talked with Etherscan as well about, what are some steps that we can take integrating with their API or whatever, to basically like show it useful information, or would it be worthwhile just like throw like some sort of like comments thing or whatever up there for people to comment and like
Corporate logos, things like that. Again, it's like the pipe saying, right? More metadata in there. If we can attach more information to not any name, of course, because then we're back to the same problem. This is why we need a subdomain. Or we need something out there that acts as a more trustworthy source that has some kind of gatewaying.
exactly.
Tokens. There's tokens, I'm saying they solve exactly this problem.
Tokens will help, yes.
Yeah, actually, I think that we have a pattern that we see in a lot of things that is basically stake bet with tokens, and I think that can be a very useful pattern. If you put a lot of your reputation at bet, saying that this is an adult site or this is an impersonator.
Right, it doesn't have to be money, like maybe
And
there's you verify
I mean, that's
that.
the thing, is that if you make it easy enough,
More
if you
like,
make
more like what's the process for burning that pot?
That's, well, that's what I mean, but verify that it wasn't a good religion.
right, so if we
Well,
make it
there are
easy enough,
things that are reasonably provable with simple,
well,
now we're
yeah.
trusting something Oracle-ized based.
And why do you
All of
need
those
to
ones
make
have
changes?
Because we don't necessarily want need to force people to go through the entire verification process for all of these. But
Show me how it works. You want to say the site is a phishing site.
no, I want to show that I am Piper Miriam on GitHub.
And you stake some tokens for that?
I could either go through the verification process,
Right.
or I could just have my reputation up at stake.
Yeah, like other people know who
And
it
it's
is and will.
really trivial to burn my reputation
Is it?
by somebody else paying the gas to unverify me using the Oracle.
What's the cost
Okay, but what is your, how does the Oracle work?
He's saying that the Oracle is involved or expensive, but you can basically just make an assertion and provide a bounty for anyone who can disprove it.
The GitHub
But
one's
the
a
Oracle
bad
is the one who checks the,
The GitHub one's a bad example because frankly, you would just have everybody actually go through the verification process for GitHub.
Right.
But for other things it may be. But we're theoretically
But
architects.
but the point is that it's a true bit pattern, right? It doesn't matter if the actual process is expensive, but if the process is trustworthy enough, then people won't need to use it because they can just bet on the outcome of the process.
Yeah.
Even if the process is
Yeah.
expensive.
Let's have like a prediction market reputation system for every opera. Right?
What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, but we won't ever have to use it because people will know that it'll resolve correctly and therefore never make bad registrations.
Yeah.
That's gonna be perfect in practice.
Okay, so real quick, we talked about a pie in the sky, sort of like what we could get to with this, but from day zero, there are things that could be verified.
So very, very quickly, the advisory system obviously is a fair bit easier. So for example, I got a web service up and running where you can currently feed it a name that will be an email address. And it will tell you if there's mixed characters, if the name does map to something that is in the same space, but like I say, with admin and stuff like that. So that on the advisory level, there is a functional level to one I think you're after, right? Where you can actually have more of a guarantee on the chain that something has been verified to a point, so you can trust it implicitly on the chain without having to go anywhere else.
Sure. That's the hope is.
So in our discussions over email, you talked about also ways for people to assert that changes won't happen, that you lock down what a name resolves to or who owns a name, so that any changes will be flagged.
So the use case of that is that someone gets access to your ENS name in some way, shape, or form. So I got an address and I got a name, it points to my good address. Somehow, some way, shape, or form that gets hacked and that address changes. So your resolution is different, which is again another one of those use cases. If a user who at the trusted level can assert they're not going to change it. Again, let's take an ICO as an example. I'm not going to change my address for the next 3 weeks. That's where it's going. If someone then manages to hack into the ENS owner and change the resolution, we can flag that and go, oh, it's changed and it wasn't meant to. So we're back to metadata and a separate side source. So in this case, we'll say, my favorite ICO.eth, we expect that address to stay exactly the same as whatever this address currently is for the next 3 weeks. If that doesn't happen, we can immediately flag it. I mean, there are simple things as well, like reverse resolution, right? We can say, I got Fred.eth, which resolves to a name, but when I reverse resolve it, it doesn't resolve to Fred.eth, or it resolves to, nasty hacker.eth or whatever it might be.
Different sizes of them.
Yeah, but the point is if it doesn't resolve back to your proper name, and if you can't, then go through the loop again. So you can go around twice just to make sure. You can see again there are potential issues there.
How do you handle it? So that makes a lot of sense, except for when domains change hands. How do you handle that in that kind of system?
The idea would be that you would set up your information beforehand. So you would say my address is not changing for 3 weeks.
Okay, but
So you wouldn't say I'm never going to change this.
what if I say my address isn't going to change for 2 years?
You've made your address worth a lot less.
Yeah, well, or you've decided that you're going to have it for 2 years. Like that's, I mean, the amazing thing about this is you cannot do this with regular domains.
No, but what I'm getting at is that while a Fisher can then release the name, they can make it unverifiable. Or I'm looking at ways that you can abuse the system to trash domain names.
You mean I haven't set this up and then someone hacks the name, sets it to their address and commits to it for 1,000 years?
Yeah.
Well, so that would be one shitty way. But moreover, I was thinking if somebody just buys a name, and once they get it and they start going to try to verify it, somebody else verified it for the next 3 years.
Okay, but the point there is to start with, when you first try to do your verification, obviously step 1 is there's a name that results to an address, so you make sure that you've got the key to that address.
Exactly.
Step 1.
My interpretation of what he was talking is that this is more like something that it's more like a promise. I promise not to change his address in the next 3 weeks. It's not that the name cannot be changed. It's just that if it's changed, some red flag will be set up, and they say, "Wait, that's weird. He promised he wouldn't. He did."
Yeah, and there's probably
that it will never be changed.
So in my imagination, like how this would be like really useful in my Ether wallet isn't necessarily like this like super black and white world where like if you promise you won't change the address and it changes, then we just like shut everything down. It would be more useful as like, you know,
big red warnings.
Yeah, so like, you know,
this
address promised that they weren't gonna change their thing, and then it changed 2 days ago. You might wanna go like do some further research or like take a second look.
And now that I've thought through it in that context, I think it's fine. You know, there's probably an upper bound that you wanna set on how long you can promise, and also it's probably not a big deal because it really is only likely gonna apply to ICOs, businesses and exchanges and things like that who are accepting money.
But we would hope over time we're going to see a lot more people on Ethereum with accepting money as corporations or just...
I'm talking about like the lay person, like
your average user probably isn't going to go and verify their address because they don't really have like that many people sending to them. But
it's
like
more like it doesn't matter as much.
Yeah. But like if you're an ICO, for example, I mean, we saw like just, I don't even like how much you guys are aware of like the scam shit in Ethereum right now, but like CoinDash, like their website got hacked I don't know, whatever. I don't know what happened, it doesn't matter. And an address was posted on the CoinDash website that said, hey, our ICO started to send out your money to this address. They got $7 million in 2 hours from 1,000 unique addresses. Okay, and the best part about all this is that was not a contract. Okay, that was a regular freaking address. So like my initial reaction to that is like, wow, well we should probably freaking verify if like an ICO address is a contract on my Ether wallet to like warn people. But then you get back to it's like the chicken and egg problem. How do you know what an ICO address is? Right. So like, you know.
Well, the answer to that is you use a trusted subdomain.
Exactly.
Right. And this is the joke. We want to start getting people to use ENS in general, not just because it's easier and we like typing names. It gives us a lot more options for security.
Exactly.
And I'm assuming that this is not the only functionality of this. Like locking up your account is one thing you can do. But say any everyday user, they decide they want to do X thing with their contract and either lock it up or be like in this many days let it go. Like there could be a lot of things that someone wants to do with this functionality. It doesn't have to be locking it up. Locking it up would be great for ICOs, of course. But say I want an address to use for something specific and I want to let go of it right away so I can my ETH back. Like I literally set it up to be this amount of time and then release. That would be a cool functionality for a different use case.
I mean, that's the thing, is like, we can go all the way down the rabbit hole with these types of things, like, so I'm gonna ask this, is like, what in the short term, what are the plans, or like, what are the next steps, or like, realistically, what is the timeline for this sort of system?
So, I've been playing around with it for a couple of weeks. I have an advisory system up and running, like I said, so you can feed it a name, it'll tell you if it thinks it's suspicious and why it thinks it's suspicious, so it looks for homograph. It doesn't do the event time distances against the network, because that requires me to getting more names out, but we have that level of system. The interesting one, like we say, is the one that's more on-chain, and the big issue with that is a question of how do we fund that? How do we run an external service? How do we trust the external service? Should we not use an external service as much as stick on-chain and use, our icons and statuses and everyone else there who's already doing identity management? So the biggest outstanding part is where do we believe we should get our trust from? And again, I would say, is it a reputation system? Is it a staking system? Do we trust other people's reputation systems? How do we do that? And that's the one that, again, there's 5-10 different solutions out there. One of the things I'd love to have known is if people kind of start to try and gravitate toward either one of them or have a standard for being able to talk across them and see if we can get details from there.
Well,
That's
so
the biggest blocker.
do you know like what the status of the reputation systems are in the whole ecosystem?
It's pretty minimal, and like it's such a huge open problem.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like in terms of what we will probably end up doing, it is essentially staking some tokens. And say, for example, this sort of GitHub thing, it's probably a little more clear in terms of what we do, because you'll have to stake your reputation to enter a group chat, for example. And then if the participants in that group chat, you basically, when you join that, you're basically saying to people who are already in that chat that they can then
I promise to behave.
yes, exactly. And they can take it away.
At the risk of my reputation.
So, but I mean, we're purposely leaving it quite open.
From registration in that chat room?
Sorry?
Do they also say to gain reputation?
We left it quite open yet, so like it's not a solved problem. Still thinking about it.
Cool. So here's a tip. If you can have some proportion of the reputation, like some identities or some portion of the reputation, give reputation to someone outside of that group, then you're vulnerable to civil attacks with that amount of reputation.
Right.
So Cory Doctorow has an interesting book called Walk Away, where he basically has the thesis that he calls them reputational dystopias, and the idea that every reputation system will be gamed in order to maximise its self-stated goals, and that it's effectively impossible to line those up with what you actually want out of the system, and eventually they just degrade into gaming the system.
Yeah.
And you're trying to get to the top of the scoreboard, even if it's
Absolutely.
nice.
So here's the question.
It's a good point.
The choice is, I mean, so right now, we already kind of have that with like capitalism in some form, with politics in some form, with media in another form. There's also different areas of life that have different kind of fitness functions and different selection pressures, where people are pushed to do kind of different types of things by different standards, and they game their incentives, and then things degrade in a certain way. And then the thing that happens is like, oh, you get this unfortunate thing called, I like call it corruption. And when you like use one system to make progress in the other, and vice versa. And so like somehow, okay, we have more of these systems, maybe we can experiment more with incentive systems and get more diversity of types of failures. But also more opportunities to like game the systems across each other.
I kind of think that's sort of his thesis, in that if you have one reputation system with one objective function, everyone knows that they can try and get to maximise that objective function. But the ultimate informal society, the thing is that every one of us is running a meeting reputation system for everyone around us, so we all have different objective functions. So it's difficult to devise one strategy that impresses everybody.
Exactly. So that's the point.
This is real life also.
Yes, and it's also how viruses spread through population.
Right.
I think there's an episode of Black Mirror like that.
That's
And that is a reputation for dystopia.
I just think what Cory
Both provide reputation and reputation according to different standards.
Yeah.
Within the same framework.
Yeah, in the same framework.
The same framework, that's all right, yeah.
So we're running up against time again. I mean, the obvious example, the obvious thing we can do is to sidestep the problem and use traditional reputation systems. We can push a thing off chain and we can say, okay, you're saying on Microsoft.eth, and that's great. We're actually going to go and verify by phoning you up or getting your thumb on breadstream, or whatever we can use in the traditional world was good enough for them, was good enough for us. Until we either see if we've got oracles or reputation systems or identity systems out there that we're happy enough with, or we can use in tandem. Like we said, if every identity or if every reputation system has an objective goal, and that's fine, maybe we can use 3, 4, 5 of them with conflicting goals to give us an overall idea of the reputation outside of the game of the system. Maybe not, it just becomes a meta game, but that's okay too, because we need something that we can do that's a lot better than where we are now. So that's one of the things that I'll be looking at over the next couple of weeks to get an idea of what the best solutions are out there, if there's something that's worthwhile doing. And it could be a choice. There's no reason why we can't have a name that's trusted by you guys and not by you guys.
Right, and so that's one thing I just want to say is like, typically when we think about like reputation systems or identity systems or like, verified systems or blacklists or whatever, we're talking about like basically telling the user whether something is like green or red, like good, bad, harmful, like beneficial, whatever. Like we're basically like making a subjective opinionated thing and like in this subjective world and like putting it into the user's head. But the other option is that everything is rather neutral and you provide additional information that's tied to it. So this is one thing that we did with like MyEtherWallet.eth is like, when we decided the language about talking about how we're gonna say that, instead of trying to solve the problem of how do we what is MyEtherWallet, like in this like, how do we verify that? What information do we ask for? You use all the system. We're like, okay, the one thing, like the factual objective, like fact is that like myetherwallet.com, right? The website you're on right now, myetherwallet.com, does not have control of myetherwallet.eth. And then you just display that message and the user can then use their own subjective decision making and rational skills and whatever to be like, okay, maybe the thing is like maybe there's MyEtherWallet.eth in the future is like some, beneficial, like, I don't know, like something, and like you do have a reason that you would want to send them money. But you also would want to be informed that it's not myetherwallet.com. And
that's where a verification system is different from a reputation system.
Right.
We can verify that MyEtherWallet.eth is owned by Freddy Hacker Dog, whatever, yeah?
Right.
So, and then that may or may not, that's not a value judgment, that's a statement that gives you additional information that people can then choose to decide on what they want to do with that.
And so like with ICOs, a similar thing may be like, okay, like it may be enough to say this address is, we verify that this address or this ENS name is, controlled by this Twitter account and this .com. And that may be enough, like without being like, a huge big thing, like it may be enough to just verify like one thing, provide that additional information to the user, and let the user then decide what they think of that and whether that's a positive thing or a negative thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you can pretty easily incorporate that into like the warning framework. Like, so yes, you have this. You can choose to verify, or like you will get warned based on other people's input, like consensus on who's interacted with that address and not screwed for their money, like things like that. And you can actually basically we give you 2 different forms, and you kind of make it so that there's not like a one. People would look at many different aspects of everything, every domain before they interacted with it. It wouldn't be like, oh, this one thing is this. I'm either not going to use it or I trust it now. So we kind of give people a reason to kind of more.
And equally, it depends on where you come from. If you come from Twitter, and I've been on Twitter, I've seen something typed in, go to this address. If I go over and go in there and it says, okay, yeah, this relates, what the address I've typed in relates to that, I feel better that the information that's coming from here is the same as the people who own that address. Now, they might still be hackers. So again, that's well, we're back to the difference between verification and reputation. Yeah. But we can do that. And as you said, we can get enough data points for people to make a better and more informed decision. And as we said, we can use more stuff. Like we said, we can lock the address for X amount of time or whatever it might be. That gives people really good red flags when we think things are starting to go a bit wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's the idea.
Very nice.
It's a good idea.
So the next session is a workshop on client considerations for, implementation considerations for clients. And I'm just gonna pop up a couple of things that are relevant here. One moment, please. When are we thinking of break? Yeah, let's take a 5 minutes break.
So you manage your own hydration.
Yes.
I've reported again and harassed them. We have the fan here.
Yes.
If it gets really bad, there's another room, but it's a bit smaller than this.
Or rather, they're all here.
Yeah. So I don't, you haven't got that fan on.
It's better for now, I think. I'll turn it on for now.
Do you want me to move it up? Would it be better?
Well, that'd be a good idea, actually.
Because it might be too cold.
So, I can close everything outside. Oh, really? Okay.
But I don't know if I have
So it's just I would love to be able to import it.
Exactly, this is the thing, right? This is and of course.
Okay, so I mean,
See what we can step down and remove and everything else.
yeah, so I find that, you know, the same size of the
I'm just trying to
But you and I just I think honestly, the thing about everyone's their like fallback language, and it's like usually the one that they would learn first.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, Matt, if you in a script like this, like a quick little script or like whatever, it's like you don't need this thing to be maintainable and perfect. You just need it to like do what you need to do right now, and that's it. So, you know, I try not to judge too much. Yeah.
See, I'm not a big fan of whereas PHP, I think, is actually dangerous. And buy more. My subjective opinion is
Yeah. No, it's funny, but it's really nice to get good photos.
But then there's like a weird control.
That's the thing, yeah, so that's like that, my whole, just along, it's such a good. That was actually not bad. Yeah, that's super nice.
I've seen that happen.
Oh god, oh god. I'm almost getting up, almost.
Yeah, so that app, we sort of built it quickly to, and so now we are at the point where it works for like 80% of the cases, and there are some very annoying bugs that are very constant technological that we just can't figure out why, or there are too many variables. I'm like, I don't have the time to try to look at all the variables. Actually, I would love to be able to. I'm considering like sponsoring some if lamps and just to like give a big look at the app and try to solve those kind of issues.
I'm very interested. You guys want to support for the
It's very straightforward because your problem isn't so much the data side, self-free download.
Yeah.
So it's not about, so that's a common thing, right? You're asking for, yes, you're asking for a solution, but the problem you have is another. The problem is the long time thing. It's not about external folder, it's really just being able to use it while it's thinking or being able to think it faster. So it's either you're going to, we are trying other light clients because I guess light clients, and we are trying while you are thinking already using it. That's the
Sorry? What does he do? I tried searching for a maintenance manual online, but I couldn't find one.
The air conditioner is now back on and it'll start cooling off.
You know, I searched for a service manual online earlier and couldn't find one, but you just push the reset button. So. Yeah. So,
What does that say about reading the docs?
Yeah, read the manual. I need to get it wrong.
Yes.
So this
Show of hands, who's read the ENS docs?
Some of them.
Hey!
I've read some of them too, but like front to end every word.
Yeah, but how many of those can you say that you've actually?
No, and then I like never do that.
And which docs? Like the EATS or the user doc?
No, there's actually the PDF, like the many page PDF.
PDF.
Read the docs, there's PDFs and other formats.
And then there's a PDF, I swear.
Right before I get on a plane, I'm always full. Like, all right, what am I working on?
So this session is about implementation considerations for clients, which I'm glad somebody suggested it because it is really important that when you type a name and I type a name into two different clients, they actually resolve to the same underlying name hash, because otherwise there are numerous opportunities for things to go horribly, horribly wrong. So I thought I'd start with a quick overview, and I should say actually that I think this talk can and should extend beyond merely just normalizing names and so on. There are other things that we talk about like UI performances, like reverse resolution, like how to show verified stuff, like we were talking about earlier with name verification and green ticks and so forth. But I thought I'd start by giving a quick overview of how clients are supposed to deal with Unicode names, deal with normalizing names, like names that are illegal, and how to deal with things like homoglyph issues in browsers. And then we can sort of expand from there. So the ENS Docs Implementers Guide has a couple of sections on normalizing and validating names, and on handling of ambiguous names. The first thing is you can't just take a standard Unicode string, split it on dots, and then feed every part into the name hash algorithm, because names need normalizing. So foo with capital O's and foo with lowercase o's is the same thing. You also can't just call to lowercase in the language of your choice, because most of those aren't Unicode aware. And those that are may follow different rules. And again, then we have the situation where somebody has my ether wallet belief, and somebody else has some other variant of my ether wallet belief that say different clients get. And this becomes particularly relevant when your name contains legitimate Unicode characters because it's written in kanji or because it's written in.
How do you suggest lowercase things? What's
So-
the best way to lowercase?
Just about to get to that. So the official process for this is you must pass it through UTS-46, which is a Unicode standard for normalizing names for use in domain names. It handles case folding, which is a more generalized version of lowercasing or uppercasing, because not every language has a concept of lowercase or uppercase. And it also handles finding repeated characters and which ASCII characters are allowed. So if you find the easiest way is your language probably has a UTS-46 library, split the name on dots, and then for each component, run it through UTS-46 with non-transitional rules, and use standard 3 ASCII rules equals true, which means basically it will prohibit characters like underscores and dollar signs and all the other ASCII characters that are outside the allowed range, and also there are a few Unicode ranges of unassigned characters and so on that shouldn't be allowed in names. So if you're doing this in JavaScript, the Ethereum ENS library already incorporates all of this for you.
So to be clear, like this is specifically talking about using ENS in clients for human readable names.
Yes.
Because like you may have use cases for ENS where you don't care if it's human readable or not, and then you don't need to restrict that, right?
If it's represented as a text dot separated text string, then it should still go through this, because otherwise you end up with the ambiguity issue.
Okay.
If you want to have a name that is picture of my cat dotty, where picture of my cat is a particular PNG, then you're welcome to do that. And obviously you can't pass that through Unicode processing, but then it shouldn't be represented as a dot separated name.
But I mean, can you have like hash, where you just have like different hashes for the results?
Yes, but you shouldn't represent that as hash dot hash dot hash, because then that would also be the result you get from hashing those hashes.
Oh, okay. So do you have a raw representation for that?
The name hash is the raw representation of the complete final thing, and the label hash is the representation of one component. We don't have a raw representation of dot separated hashes for components.
Okay, interesting.
If you want to invent a notation for that, then you're welcome to.
Double dot.
Colons,
I don't know, they might be empty
No,
strings.
this is what URIs are for. You just
Yeah.
come up with a URI scheme in front.
Okay.
Additionally, if you want to use this in JavaScript, I took just this function and isolated it
Name
as an
hash,
npm
yes.
module.
It's
ENS name hash.
It's ENS name hash. There you go. And in fact, I can't remember, I already did it, but the intention is to make Ethereum ENS depend on that library to avoid replication.
I just copied this thing. It imports that and all that.
One slight hiccup here is that in JavaScript, the JavaScript UTS-46 library depends on one ES6 feature in order to iterate over long UCS characters. I've got no pull request against that library to remove that feature so that it will be ES5 happy, but it hasn't been responded to or merged yet. So if you really need to run into ES5 stuff, then you may run into issues or need to patch in my patch. So far, so straightforward as long as you follow the rules. One thing that we should probably add to action items is developing a test suite and a set of test vectors for determining if a client is compliant. So input strings of difficult combinations of letters and output name hashes. The second issue is one that's come up a couple of times this weekend, which is handling of ambiguous names. Names in Cyrillic, names mixing different alphabets together. And fixing this, so this is homoglyph attacks, and fixing this is non-trivial. In traditional browsers, they apply a strategy of some kind to try and detect these names, and when they detect a suspicious name, they, instead of showing the Unicode version of the name, show the Punycode version of the name. Punycode, as you probably know, but is a way to encode Unicode names using legacy ASCII character sets. It looks like XM dash dash and then a whole bunch of text and a dash and so on. The issue here is that because DNS was invented in 1980 something, maybe 1979, and ENS was invented last year, there was really no reason to limit ENS to Unicode, to ASCII only. So ENS natively supports Unicode and thus doesn't use Unicode for encoding names. So it arguably at least does not make sense for browsers and clients to show the Unicode version of a name if it's suspicious looking, because that's actually not a representation that's used anywhere. So we as client implementers need to come up with other ways to warn users that a name is suspicious or weirdly constructed.
Yeah, just like we are not in the late 80s anymore. We can use colors and things like that.
Yes.
So my intention with Myth is simply to whenever I find a disparate set of characters, to highlight them in some color with red, and then alert users saying those letters might not appear what they are or something like that, and maybe even ask, do you want to enable Russian Cyrillic characters in your browser?
And it may not even be necessary to show them the specific characters that are decepted, just to warn them that it contains a mix of scripts in a suspicious fashion.
I was thinking about the colors thing, and then like color blindness.
Yes.
And then I was thinking, okay, what you do is you go to different colors and you resize and retypeface those letters, right? So you use like sans serif for some of them and serif for the other ones.
And then everyone like
and big.
throws up because it's so ugly
And then they know that something weird is going
and
on,
they
right?
definitely are so nauseous
So then
that
look
they
like
know
a,
it's
you just
wrong.
that character that looks like a sans pretty. So when they look at them all, they're like, oh, this looks so nice. I'm definitely going to use this. You make the bad ones look really bad. So you're like, man, this is fucked up.
Ultimately, as a user, if I go to a phishing URL that's using Cyrillic characters, I don't actually care which characters are Cyrillic. I just care that it's obviously not a normal URL. So I personally would be happy with a big red warning that says this URL is deceptively constructed or something along those lines.
Just like on that, the Unicode Consortium has the UTR-36 and UTS-39, which is largely formed by Google, which has all of these sort of attacks. Well, not all of them, but like they're all like clearly defined. And they also talk about TR9, which is bidirectional Unicode characters. There's also invisible characters.
Sorry, it's UTR-36.
And 39, TS-39.
UTS-39.
Yeah, I think you can kind of just remove the U, but yeah.
Okay, so both good points, thank you. Both of these should be reviewed by client implementers as well.
Yeah.
So you've got lots of reading to review.
Yeah, so
You read that?
so basically, as I understand it, is like there's IDNA 2003 and 2008, which informs this transition into Punycode more or less into collection RFCs. We could probably ignore all of that.
Yes. So my understanding from reading the IDNA stuff is it is largely concerned with Punycode encoding and such, and that UTS-46 is the underlying transform that we actually care about now.
Yes, exactly. So these two I would like to see implemented, and in how I view it is like 3 layers of opinions. Okay, we've been debating a lot about distribution resolution, but then we have this sort of layer 2, which is whatever we want to call these lists. And then this third layer, which is very client, is on the client implementation, which is informed by layer 2 also, because you can basically do these comparisons between these lists and these specifications as well.
So can you briefly summarize what UTR-36 and UTS-39 are about?
I cannot, but we could scroll through them. There's recommendations down the bottom of one of them, and I think it's under 2. Basically, there's a bunch of security issues that are outlined in all of these.
Yep, so this report is a summary of security issues, and some recommendations,
Yes.
not an algorithm for transforming names.
No, there isn't, but there is a spoof checker library that's implemented by PHP and another one which implements these. And they more or less cover the same things that Chromium and Firefox do.
Right, okay. So to clarify, if you do not implement UTS-46 normalization, you are broken. You are not calculating correct name hashes from URLs. If you want to protect your users from URLs that have valid name hashes but are deceptive, you should read UTR-36 and UTS-39 so that you know how to detect and highlight these URLs.
And that's some of the stuff that's in the resolver stuff I was talking about earlier.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very related.
And also good reading is Chromium's documentation linked from the ENS docs on how it handles ID and what their systems are for detecting deceptive URLs and so forth. Although I suspect 36 and 39 more or less obsolete that now.
More or less, yeah. And some of the stuff is actually broken in that, but you know, it's still pretty good in terms of getting a better understanding of what they're doing.
Yeah, from language wise, yesterday there are 3 agents in community, and we talked about how to handle our languages with based on Chinese characters, and the current Unicode system unfortunately does not fit well on our real needs within the Unicode system or Google, or because mainland China, Google is not there, and in Japan, Japan headquarters is maybe it's gone, and just only marketing function kind of thing right now. So and the ENS is the first implementation of the text on the blockchain, and there are those kind of needs that using different characters, different languages, nations to really beneficially utilize the internet or blockchain or whatever online things, or connected to the cultural or language-based cultural requirements of the nation. So at this moment, I didn't summarize to present to show you well, but in long-term range, I myself would like to try to put those kind of functionality, diversity functionality into the blockchain-based ENS or whatever we are gonna make. We are gonna try making in near future.
So what would that be in concrete terms? What would that involve?
Excuse me?
What would putting language diversity into ENS involve?
Well, for example, yeah, I registered several kanji domain name in ENS, but for example, the exchange is exchange in Japanese is just 3 or 4 characters. Yeah, 3 characters. Yeah, 2 or 3 characters.
So you're saying that the 7 letter limit means that you practically have to write a novel.
Yeah. That makes sense with like kanji to full words or like phrases. It's
So-
like
So those limitations have to have some variation. It depends on the
So
real needs.
this did come up before launch, and I wasn't aware of a good solution. Like people suggested counting by bytes, but counting UTF-8 bytes isn't really a good representation of information content either, because some alphabets that contain relatively little information per character are way out in Unicode space, and other alphabets that contain a lot of information per character are closer in, and therefore it wouldn't be representative. But then, as you point out, numerous characters. Do you have any suggestions, like short of going through every alphabet in Unicode and determining how much information per character is? Do you have any recommendations?
I'm not good at the code system and governance of that at this moment, but I'm willing to do that if that really matters.
That's interesting because it seems that would eventually be solved when we reduce the limit.
Yeah. When is that, by the way?
Before we go there, is there any other implementation detail in which like other non-English languages didn't work well in ENS?
the font size, character size is one of them. And for example, in the alphabetic English characters, the search engine and domain name directly connected to us, but for the Chinese or Japanese character case, there are some redundant layer inside on ENS. So yeah, I'm not a SEO guy, but yeah, in alphabetic character case, it's direct connection of the name and search ranking kind of thing. But for the for Japanese case, there are several alternative auto name on particular word. Like yeah, Japanese itself has several type of character called hiragana, katakana, kanji, three kind, and then alphabet. So kanjo itself can be written in many.
So it's like, I mean, one thing is like, how much does that matter at this current moment? Because I mean, in like kanji, like the .e doesn't currently translate to that.
Yeah, but
right?
it's just a representation. You don't actually need to have that representation.
Well, but how much do we need representation right now of like solving this problem? Like how many actual, like is this actually a problem?
He's bringing it up as a problem, he's presenting it as a problem. I would say that based on the number of Japanese speakers we get every month, there's a large user base in Japan that speaks Japanese and uses Japanese characters. I would say that it's worth discussing, absolutely.
But the thing is, like now, when you type an URL, you can actually register domain in Japanese. I think that, but in reality, not many people use it because these are like ENS is for what you represent in ENS is rather like key than the content. Content you have to be able to represent in whatever the language you do. But your native result, if you try to make it like to try to do it Japanese, that means non-Japanese people it's almost impossible to resolve, even though you want to do it. So I don't know, as a idealistic, it's nice to be able to support, but in the practical sense, I don't know. So we don't use it.
So to be clear, you're basically saying like Japanese users typically know how to enter English alphabet characters, but English speakers do not know how to enter katakana, hiragana.
We do use alphabet.
Yes.
Yes. I have a question. So I'm not sure if I understood the issue, but is the second issue about normalization or about politicization, just being able to normalize and make sure that, like, if you type a name, before we hash it, we reduce it to the like a common thing, just like the uppercase, lowercase. Is that what he's bringing up?
I think part of it was that there's like one word will have several different iterations. So like the word for door will have like also like XYZ, Bob, cat, and like they're all mean the same thing. So like if you're actually trying to like normalize or translate, like that's not a functional way to do it.
And that's not unique to Japanese.
Yeah.
Like, we have color.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you can register both. I don't see that as a problem.
So that was one.
And then, so, like, I think back to using plus, like, for example, character representation. For example, my name, Makoto, is 6 characters, but in Chinese character is 1. If I want to have Makoto.e, currently the limitation of the 7 characters, but I will do that because you can't type Makoto unless you copy and paste. Then it gets back to the, like you need to copy and paste.
But I'm okay with that in the sense that I don't mind if we suddenly discover that we have a sub-community that where only Japanese people are sending to Japanese people and out to Japan. I think that's great because it allows Ethereum to flourish in smaller communities. I don't think that's a problem, right? It's just like an optional.
I guess, yeah, it's optional, but it's not the.
Yeah, and it's like also that also kills the option of like at some point translating into other languages. So if you wanted to like globally register a domain and you want anyone in any language to be able to use their language to get to your domain. Like, that would make it very hard or impossible.
That must already be gone, surely people have registered exchange in different languages.
Sorry, what would make it impossible to do that?
The fact that like people are, I mean, you basically can register the same name in every different language as a separate domain.
Isn't that the way to do it? Like if you
That's
run a
that's
company,
the way that you talk about it. Absolutely.
Is this not an argument for script-specific TLDs? I'm not sure it's necessarily a good idea.
I don't think so. I think from what I'm hearing, I think the fact that we hashed a name before we use it was actually a very good decision, because then it means that you can use it in any script current or in the future that is going to be invented.
sorry, like why does hashing make that easier?
Because then you normalize it and then
The base system
But you could
supports it.
normalize it without hashing it and you get the same result.
yeah, but then my point is that anything can be hashed at some point, right?
But the input is always, like, for any hash, you could use the input in its place to the same end.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, and because I'm expect the ENS domain name is not just a word, but it's soon to be expanded into ontology or semantic web type kind of thing soon. So in order to preserve Japanese character written in Japanese languages for myself and some other nations that have same kind of requirement, we should think about those kind of minor, I would say minor language relations requirement into the base design, I believe. So, and I myself feel that we are left behind in the legacy web phase, including current DNS system. So.
I mean, I think it's probably a very valid concern that the fact that we've locked up characters 7 names or less means that we've locked out most pictographic languages from having any useful name registered at the moment.
Oh, yeah. I believe the 7 character limitation is just experimental.
It exists today, so like I say, I can register exchange in my language, you can't do it in yours.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily, and I understand it's always arbitrary, like say in pictographic language, like you say it's 2 characters big.
Yeah.
And most like you say, 7 characters is a pretty big limitation to you. If we put ENS out there saying, well, you can't register anything less than 64 characters, everyone would be, well, yeah, exactly, we're mad, right? Why would you do that? So it is, I think, yeah.
I mean, it does, yeah, it really makes sense. Like, there are languages that literally you cannot register anything except for like a story of your life.
Is there anything like new to be said on the subject? Because I think it might be worth us moving on
maybe
to other client
I
things.
think I can distill it, so like, we've got 2 action possibilities. One is, yeah, we write a big table and maybe like rate things, which is a lot of work and labor intensive. The other is maybe just accelerating the rate at which we reduce the character limit.
Yeah.
Or I mean, because that is gonna happen, so.
Is
So
there
there's a
a
natural
reason,
solution.
is there a reason for it to still be in place today?
Yes.
Yes.
The set of, if you were to plot the value, the sort of cumulative value, however you define that of all names, a large proportion of that would be in short names. And we're concerned about making those available where they will almost certainly not be snapped up by people who are going to use them for their end purpose. Because the system is still much smaller now than we anticipate it being in the future. Basically, when they go up
Is that always the case?
yes, but there are different scales of like, you know, if you said most humans are not born yet, that's true now probably, and was also true when there were only 10,000 humans, but it's a lot more true then, you see what I mean?
Exponentially more.
Yeah, so basically we want to start releasing those names when we think there's a reasonable probability that the person who actually wants that name, or you know, would most use that name, is watching.
Oh, and honestly, to answer more, bro, I think once we have the program registered in place, I'm okay with starting releasing it. Like the next registered in place.
And the other consideration is that it's just dispute processes. Like if we had a dispute process that would transfer names, like a first layer dispute process, then it would be a lot easier to release these names and the knowledge that if they were egregiously like abused, then there would be some way to fix that. But for now, at least, you buy it, it's yours, and there's no changing that. It makes it easier for those names to be popped up. I mean, we're trying to learn from experiences like NamePoint, where people just bought up all the short names and spotted on them. And the problem is that at some point that's strangles the host. You know, you end up with so much useful namespace tied up that it's, you know, by inactive users that it's not useful.
Which is fair. There's an argument that Nike on Ethereum because Nike Belief isn't available.
Kind of.
I'm curious as to how you're going to get your indicators to say now's the right time to do it.
I'll know it when I see it. Like when there really are multiple strong or reliable signals of mainstream adoption.
Or even having a dispute process, and then you can just release everything as long as the guy followers can claim that it's.
When we've got more than 5 or 6 trivial, non-trivial banks who let you actually hold crypto in your bank accounts, things like that, like you're actually seeing it, not just.
I also don't really look forward to releasing the names in terms of it's just a bug of support and people being mad and angry and I'm still traumatized from the last round, so maybe we'll wait a little bit just to remember.
Wait till you guys sell my Ether wallet and cash out your physical promise.
And then release them all. We'll just dump it on the first time.
I mean, this is
Turn off the internet.
This is somewhat off topic for the nominal topic of the discussion. But it isn't something but it isn't something we've covered in any other session, so I think it is worth spending a little time exploring it. And I completely lost my train of thought.
So we've been talking about this, these different layers of advisories or opinions on what a domain is good or not. And we've been talking about plugging that into some kind of warning system. So I'd be really interested to hear from MetaMask and Mew what their current decision tree looks like in terms of that warning system and what the user experience looks like. And if there's, maybe it could be a discussion for any IP, but maybe there's a way we can kind of formalize that a little bit more. So we're all kind of doing the same thing.
We talked about it a little bit before. We have, the small community right now of people not connected to us that are helping out a lot, and a lot of it's just people that got pitched that are now on getting those people. So we have kind of a community consensus, and then after that, we go and look at it, and you're like, okay, this is either going to happen or it's not. And we don't have control over some of it because it's not ours, but then they're using the same.
I guess what I meant was what do we display to the user? So for example, one of the problems I see is
about the URL blacklist.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different lists. So we have the URL blacklist, which is the in the use Chrome extensions. If you go to a URL that's on the blacklist, it'll show a screen to you that says, hey, this has been reported as a phishing URL or a scam URL, and you probably shouldn't visit it. If you want to visit it, don't use this Chrome extension. They have to make a conscious decision to basically disable the Chrome extension, use a different browser, whatever, in order to access the site. In terms of what URLs get added to that blacklist, it's pretty we haven't had anything that's super contentious.
Yeah.
Simply because most of them are really obvious. It's 99% are my Ether wallet variations. Oh my go, ohmy's-go.com. It's not something that is really, we know what the real Oh My's domain is because it's been published everywhere and they're verified on Twitter and all this stuff, and that's obviously not. So that's those are the types of things that we're dealing with right now, and it's really, really obvious. So I'd say the decision making tree is you look at it and if it's not the legit site, you blacklist it.
right. Okay.
Okay.
So I guess a couple of questions I have, just to expand on what this might look like.
Yeah.
Say for example, what Jim brought up, space in ASCII and space in Cyrillic. If we go to the user, say, hey, you can go to space.
Yeah.
They see space in the URL bar or something like that, and then it's hey, actually go to space. You can do it if you want, but this space is better than that space. Is a little confusing. That's one question. The other question would be same with the thing with like invisible characters or something like that. So a lot of the things in some of those recommendations, they're not necessarily like you can send it to a function and get a Boolean response. Some of those like have different things like invisible characters. Like, I mean, do we want to say this website, you can still go to it, but
We
Yeah.
do, they don't.
No, we don't, no, we don't, wait,
No.
stop. No, with ENS things that have invisible characters, you wanna let the user.
No, I'm saying that
Yeah.
our approach up to this point with what we've been dealing with has been to warn people not to stop them from going there.
right.
Like,
So, and again, we're talking about different things here, because we're talking about the Chrome extensions and URLs, we're talking about addresses and what they can do. So I would say that ENS is like kind of both. So in that case, I would say that the language we would use would be to inform the user objectively about what is happening. So meaning that, hey, there's an invisible character here, like, did you copy and paste this from, a trusted source? Are you sure you want to do that? Those types of things. Yeah.
I disagree there. Shouldn't invisible characters be just taken out away when you normalize the name?
I mean,
Just for
okay.
knowledge, UTS 46 does remove all invisible characters.
I have no idea. I'm just using this as an example. Like, let's also say the same thing for like a Cyrillic E, or an E with a little thingy, or a thingy, or whatever, those types of things. How do we handle that? I would say again, like, hey, you have a mixed set of characters. Like Catholics or Latin, and then you have this one random E.
Right, I think there's a case where it's
sure?
not mixed, right? So.
Right, and like this is the thing, it's like, so one, like my email has 2 E's, which is like the worst thing in the world, because there's like 80 E's you can choose from, and they all have really tiny little dots and stuff, and then the L is tall, so the dots get lost instead of L. They get people all the time with these guys.
capital I.
And like, they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, that too. They don't.
So that's kind of solved with like lowercase. Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, God, so much in my head. We use like monospace fonts for addresses and ENS names. I think Chrome should definitely differentiate between I's and L's and O's and O's and zeros. Slack, Twitter, and Google fail really hard at this. Like, screw you guys, you're dumb. It's not hard to have a font that's like a cool font that still differentiates between letters. Reddit does this. Like, Reddit's the only site that literally that uses a font that literally you can tell the difference.
This uses a font that's different.
Yeah, and so we purposely use monospace fonts for that reason, for things like this. Anyways, but
again, that comes back to the positive side of things, where we can have someone who registers based on ETH or whatever, and
yeah,
we don't have to spend, we will spend time guessing if it looks dodgy in all the various ways. We can always say, these are the verified guys, these are the people who you probably want to go to, right?
yeah,
And that's that second system that sits on the side,
Right.
right? And it gives you that additional information. Because that's not something we can ever do fully programmatically.
Yes.
Right.
We don't know if Microsoft or ETH is owned by Microsoft or not. We just don't.
Yes.
Right.
So
Exactly.
it's finding how we have a system to do that, and that was like that secondary thing I was talking about. Whatever we come up with.
Yeah.
So that's where
Absolutely.
drag you guys in to make sure we're talking about that and seeing what
Yeah.
we are at least unhappy with.
Yep, so I completely agree with that. So that spoof checker class that implements those two recommendations, basic and this sort of information from this sort of level 2 thing would work exactly like that. So you would basically go, okay, this space thing, does that match anything that's in this? And then we can basically, that's a Boolean response, you go true and you go, hey, watch out.
So we can, like I say, that gets us to the stage of, we know you typed in space correctly without Cyrillics or invisible characters, or, all the billions things you can do. But are these the people you want to be sending your money to? Is that the second question? That's the other one we need to tackle as well. So yeah, there's two.
yeah, so I would say that,
Related but different systems.
I'll give my
yeah,
personal directed at both partners. So you're asking about ETH resolution. I think there's a variety of warnings and things we're going to have to address. I'm very open to having ongoing UX conversations. Right now, when we resolve ENS names, we have 3 different resolution type symbols. Right now, they're all very simple though, because we haven't had access to Jim's wonderful logo, and we don't have any reputation systems in place yet, right? In terms of common symbols we want to use, we should work on those together because these don't exist for URL bars today. We've got block bars, but your browser doesn't or as far as I know, I guess some browsers will say this looks like a suspicious site or whatever, but they don't have these degrees of certainty or suspicion or advice that we kind of have the power to do. So right now we've got green checks for it is an ENS name. We've got a yellow mark for they failed to resolve, or no, we got a red mark for it failed to resolve, or maybe that's an error, and then yellow for failed to resolve. Anyways, we probably need to explore the pictographic space for a variety of warnings, trust levels, confidence, reputation. This is kind of uncharted territory, but I agree that warning. So if we don't find, if we don't know anything about them, but there's no pictographic things, we probably just make it look kind of normal, not a warning, right? But if we can catch a suspicious attack, have something that looks, alerty, but not not probably yellow, not red. I don't know.
I personally think that there's a point at which you do just not let that address work. There's a point at which there's $1 million of people's funds that have gone into stress. We know that address is sealed.
Well, so that's,
shut it down.
but see, these are two completely different things. The first thing is saying in all use cases, always, no matter what manual thing happens, if this character exists, we're going to do this. So if we have a Cyrillic E and a set of Latin characters, we're going to throw this warning, right? And then we have this dude took $1 million, we're gonna just blacklist it. It's not, it's gonna be a big red warning that says, hey, this guy is stealing people's money. It's those are two separate things, but we still we can't only do the latter without doing the former, because the former applies to everything ever, and it'll prevent the latter from happening.
But the warnings are almost more useful than the actual blacklisting, because people actually think about it, and you actually start to train users to get into this state of I want to make sure this is the correct place.
Right.
Yeah. And there's a continuum. It's not a binary thing between warning and blocking. If you look at how Chrome handles things, big red warning, and then you have to click the advanced button, and then the yes, I really know what I'm doing button.
Which notice that, but that is such good UX. That is the really good UX. So you're forced to click a very tiny link where the thing that you want to click, the button, is to go back, right? You click that. It's not a button. It's a link inside a paragraph of text. So it literally makes you go through two pause twice in order to do it. And that's smart. And I need to be better. Community needs to be better at these forced pauses. For confirmation modes, for example, because people just breeze through them and then they want a confirmation, further confirmation. And I'm okay. So those are the types of things that when we're thinking about UX, we're thinking about what action we want the user to take, or allowing advanced users to do something. Forcing the user to stop, forcing them to do that extra work is a really, really good method for that.
So as I understand this is from the long and difficult UX experience, because people are very goal oriented. And when they have a thing they want to do, visit the site, it takes a hell of a lot to knock them out of that. Click whatever buttons I need to do to get this thing out of the way.
Yes. Especially the ICOs.
Yeah. And so we really need some UX designers who
can
leverage similar experience for us.
We need just more UX designers in this space.
And we were actually yesterday talking about the maybe building a UX team for Ethereum, a community for everybody.
The intersection of UX and mechanism design is fascinating, right? Because people often make kind of dumb decisions when they make intuitive decisions. And maybe a UX can make the dumb decision the one that's rational for that incentive mechanism.
And people accept defaults as well.
This is how the Chrome page tries to do it. Of course, it's tailored like that. The big red button that you might click naively is the one that goes bad.
The one that cancels your transaction.
When you look at, the UX is fascinating, but buttons are the things that people just do naturally. I'm sure that you've all had this, an error message or a confirmation or something where you consistently click the wrong button. You consistently click the cancel button. Sometimes that's bad UX, but sometimes that's actually good UX. So in a case that that the confirmation would be doing something like sending all your money, or something dangerous like deleting your account, like so on GitHub when you like delete an account or delete a repo, it literally like the buttons are flipped, so your default action is to click this one, is actually to like just cancel. And then they make you like also manually type in the repo name, which is hidden in the middle of a freaking paragraph again. Like this is like such a UX thing. You hide the information that the user needs inside the paragraph, and you make them like they can't skim it anymore. And
It's like a
yeah.
design of that stool showing us.
What, sorry?
When you're showing that that perfectly designed chair, it looks just like the turn of everything.
The Camden bench,
That's
which
it,
is designed by the London Borough of Camden, and it's been called the perfect anti-object because it is anti-graffiti, anti-drug dealing, anti-slipping, anti-bag stealing. It is a bench that is designed to find more by what it's not and what it is. It's designed for one place.
It's just in different directions.
Yeah, it alternates the directions, so yeah.
Why is that circular?
Because it's
Back and hide.
yeah, it has like no opportunities to hide what you're doing or to like secrete things, I think.
Okay. Stat rolls off.
Yeah. So some people think this is a bad thing, that it's like it's an object that's defined by all the things it isn't, but other people go, well, lighting things is part of design, so.
I love it. If you want people to press something, put a big green button that says go.
Yeah.
Literally, and there's, I forgot what website it is, there's literally a button on it, and it literally, the only thing it does is it counts. It's like, it's a huge number. Like, literally, all it does is count, and like, a lot of people have gone to this website and clicked on that
So
button.
every time anyone clicks anywhere, it's for everyone.
I
Wasn't that the Reddit like 3
Yeah.
Yeah, there was that too, which was the everyone gets to click only once. Yeah. I feel like part of the reason people are so robust at making their way through UIs without paying attention to them is because they're so used to bad UI design. They've developed instincts for bypassing them, which don't serve them well when the
Which is an anti-pattern, right? It's just for the miss forces you to type your password every time you make a transaction. That might be a good idea because you force you to think, but it also forces you to type like your password automatically all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's terrible because sometimes I've had it happen to me. I was like doing a bunch of things in ENS, buying a bunch of options, typing my password all the time. Suddenly some other field completely unrelated appeared and I typed my password.
You had a support ticket from someone who registered their private key.
That's
Oh,
a
yeah.
common
Do you
thing.
wanna know?
That's not one support ticket, that's several.
Okay, so we actually now, like, if you type your private key into the ENS field, like, it literally, the first thing it does is it, like, checks if it's a valid private, like, okay, so in the ENS field, which is not a private key field, it checks if it's a valid private key. And, like, if it's a valid private key, it literally says, like, stop everything. And it, like, shows you a warning, and it says, hey, it says, this looks like a private key, are you sure you want to do this? And we've gotten so many emails from people that are like, oh my god, I just want to say thanks, like, I don't know what I was thinking, like, I was just on autopilot. I was like, yeah, you're not the only one, that's why we now have a freaking, like, warning, like, this is amazing. I don't know if he actually registered his private key, though, or if he just, like,
There's auctions started for private keys.
no, like,
Like,
I don't.
It's a hash of the thread.
Yeah. So my main thing was, I was worried, I was like, well, yeah, if you didn't, like, start an auction, like, it's fine, I was thinking about it, I was like, well, actually, like, I think that that's a payout with just, like, the actual private key as, like, a parameter of the ENS call to the API, right? Like, when you resolve, or when you go to check the status of the name, that's, like, going to the network, right?
No, only invalidation sends the plain text. Invalidation for being too short, that's the only thing that sends plain text.
Okay, so.
Let me just pull this to a halt for a moment. We've got about 5 minutes left. Does anyone else have UI issues that they want to bring up before lunch? Or, sorry, client considerations?
It's not entirely clear to me whether implementing ENS at the development framework level is valuable. I've just finally got most of the Python libraries validating the IP55 checksums, but support for ENS names in all of the places where address fields are used, like, it's not clear to me whether or not it's a good idea for Web3
So
to
personally,
take ENS names, just because I'm not sure it's appropriate at that level, and I'm curious what other people think.
This is just risk aversion because ENS might change or screw up or something.
No, it's that Web3, in my opinion, we should not be encouraging people who need ENS names to find addresses to be using low-level tools.
so let me ask, would you say the same thing about the Unix socket functions?
I am not familiar enough with
When you open a TCP socket, it accepts DNS name, even though that introduces dependence on an external system, with all the same arguments as for ENS.
All right, fair point. So no, and I have not thought deep into this either. So I see that like instantiating an instance of a contract that now makes a lot of sense to use an ENS name because I want to instantiate the Right.
Yeah, I think it's just an abstraction question. Like Web3 is actually a convenience library. The provider doesn't need ENS.
Right.
It just enables the actual interface to.
And I'll say that our first, we're changing over the address fields. Our first ones were like on the send tab, and we're like, yay, we're done. And then it actually turns out like the most important places that you want these are when you add a custom token, and the contracts happen in these places that aren't sending to the address. It's like all those places that you don't actually use it for that, but it's super nice to have. Contracts themselves, so common So I would say
that right there convinced me.
Yeah, I'm still not convinced. I mean, for one thing, if we think we're gonna stop most abuse with extra protocol stuff, that stuff are we gonna put that in Web3 also?
Well, so that extra protocol stuff can be my vision.
Web3.
So
no, actually, also on the chain. So you can write an ENS registry that is a proxy to the main one.
Of course.
That just blacklists anything.
Of course. And you can do whatever rewrites too.
And
the question is what would you feel about that in Web3?
Well, so I have an answer for
would have
that.
to care about that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So I don't think that's necessarily cool
No,
because then you're exposing.
Well, that's why we wanted to.
So client
design.
design. So client design.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm working on a big refactor to Python Web3, which I understand is very similar to the provider engine for JavaScript Web3, which is I'm calling it middleware, and almost all of the functionality that is currently inside of my current Python library is moving into middlewares. So the ENS thing is going to end up being a middleware that as you pass requests in, when it sees an ENS name, it does the conversion.
Sure, yeah. But why won't ENS also be in there instead of Web3?
No. So that's the thing is that it is an ENS middleware. And the idea is that users will know this is the default set of middlewares that I provide, and they are safe. That they are the sane, restrictive, safe defaults. And the idea there is that people who want their blacklist added in can drop that in as a middleware. People who don't want the blacklist can easily drop it out. The idea is to have an opinionated set of defaults that are hopefully safe and probably more restrictive than necessary. And people who want to do unsafe stuff, who want to bypass things.
And so why is that not something suitable for Web3?
I'm saying that it is now.
Oh.
I have flip-flopped since I began.
I mean, my own opinion would be that system-level libraries like Web3 implementations should do the ENS resolution, and the blacklists and whatnot can be implemented by pointing it at a registry that implements that, and that high-level things like warning people about phishing sites and so on are naturally UI concerns, so they have to be done at a high level.
Yeah, and I was thinking more of the blacklist.
Yeah. But I think we can and should implement proxy contracts that just make blacklists a matter of changing what the root is rather than having to write new code at the Web3 level.
And then making the default one of those.
That's up to the individual library.
No, that's up to Web3.
Yes.
Yeah.
The
Library
Web3 library is like the individual.
Whether or not my default ship with root ENS or blacklist.
Yeah.
which I don't know what I would do yet, because I would probably need to wait until those actually exist.
Yes.
So in terms of next steps, do we create an EIP for sort of going through those recommendations and, or is it more outside of that, do you think, in terms of?
I mean, but
Adding ENS resolution to Web3?
No, sorry, back on the previous topic, design
Reading
considerations.
a document that already exists, right?
I'm still not sure what we're talking about.
You're talking about client implementation.
Yeah, I mean, so like this UX warning stuff,
Yes.
and it's gonna be informed by those already existing documents, but those documents don't say how to actually handle them. They basically just,
And I'm not sure it should be in the IP, but.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
I should almost make a
I
new
would say,
design
I
report.
would say literally like make a GitHub discussion somewhere and ping me and I'll post it on ours or reference it on ours and
I'm
like,
gonna say the opposite and
You're
say
gonna
that,
say
say that an opinionated EIP with recommendations for client implementers sounds like a great idea.
let's look, yeah.
As long as it's opinionated recommendations
Yeah.
that try to be objective about what, you know,
Absolutely.
it's like, if we want to be consistent with what's already out there.
well,
here is
yeah, I mean,
a
I would even,
recommendation for,
I would say that the goal of this EIP or whatever would be to for a new user or a new developer entering the space, or a new wallet or a new client or like a Bitcoin wallet that's like entering the Ethereum space, having a single place they can go and be like, okay, here's the libraries that I need to include and here's the checks I need to run.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, like that's really important. Like I don't know, like whenever I have to go look up the bib mnemonic stuff, like it's like, frick, like I just wish someone would just tell me what to freaking use. You know what I mean?
I'd like
Even
to
if it's-
recall for WalletCon, we should have a WalletCon. Figure this stuff out.
Honestly, I think that would be an excellent idea. I think you should have a wallet foundation.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
just technical report.
Just, yeah,
Oh
right.
my god.
No, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. We really do have work
Right,
problems.
it is however now lunchtime, so all enjoy your lunch, we will reconvene at 1 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah. Just make it and then.
Those listening along at home, we will be starting a new stream at 1 p.m. BST in an hour. Thank you.